Some scenes are forever imprinted in the viewer's memory, including Mufasa's death. A huge lion, a symbol of strength, power, and wisdom, falls into a gorge flooded by the panic of fleeing antelopes. A rockfall, the thud of hooves, and absolute silence after Mufasa's body disappears beneath the mass of animals. Simba approaches. Father lies unmoving, and that's it. No blood, no injuries, not the slightest sign of violent death. Just a motionless body that no one picks up, no one buries, and that disappears as soon as Simba runs away. No character ever sees him again, not even Scar. Scripturally, this is done with as much emotional economy as possible. But logically, it raises too many questions. Where is the body? Let's start with the most obvious. In the African savanna, a dead body cannot disappear without a trace. It is either found or stays in the frame, as a visual confirmation of the finale. In The Lion King, death is shown openly in several scenes. Scar's body remains in place at the end of the movie, and in the prequel, other lions are seen dying, with visual clarity. In The Lion King 2, Zira's body drowns, and even this is framed in such a way that it's clear to the viewer, the character is dead. Now compare that to Mufasa, the only key character whose death is framed as a disappearance. We are not shown how the body is carried away, how it is eaten by hyenas, how it is buried by the pride. Nothing. Just Simba runs away in a panic and the scene changes. No one sees the body a second time. Sarabi doesn't come to say goodbye. Even Zazu, who is nearby, says nothing. No one in the Pride Parade discusses what happened to the king's body. This is not just an omission. It could be a deliberate scripted maneuver. What if the body disappeared because Mufasa didn't die? There's a key point. Scar tells Simba that Mufasa is dead. He convinces him that it's Simba's fault. But can Scar be trusted? His goal is to eliminate both father and son and any compromising trace. Why not use Simba's fear against himself? But even Scar himself is not present at the death. He drops Mufasa, but he doesn't go any further down. He doesn't make sure his brother is dead. He doesn't check for a pulse and doesn't see the remains. He just leaves, sending the hyenas after Simba. And no one else, not even Scar, confirms death as a fact, only as a theory. The body disappears. There's no trace. Death is claimed but not proven. Let's compare this to other franchise scenes where characters die. There is always a specific reason, a visibly formalized death, the reaction of those. In Mufasa's case, there's nothing. Even the cloud scene in which he talks to Simba does not show the spirit of the dead, but a visual archetype, an image created in Simba's head. It's not a ghost like Mufasa's in The Lion King 3. It's an inner voice embodied in the sky. This leads to the first logical assumption. Mufasa is not dead. He survived, but he disappeared. And if we accept that assumption, the next much more pressing question inevitably arises. Who benefited from his disappearance but not his death? One logical assumption is not enough to believe that Mufasa survived. One must answer the obvious question, where did he go? A lion is not a house cat that can get lost behind the sofa. It's a predator, a leader, a figure that can't be hidden within the confines of a pride. So if he survived, he's gone, or gone, and by all accounts, deliberately. Let's start with geography. In The Lion King, Pride Land is only a part of the vast African expanse. Beyond it are the jungle, the hyena territory, the elephant's graveyard, and other lands not subject to royal authority. Simba, the banished child, finds refuge beyond the borders, in lands where the authority of Mufasa and Scar means nothing. Timon and Pumbaa do not live under anyone's protection. They are on their own and survive by food, instincts, and caution. Simba, who grew up among them, also survives. That means that even a lonely, traumatized, discarded lion can survive. Even more so if he is mature, strong, and wise. Another interesting parallel arises. The exiles. Not all of them die. Some return, like Simba, others build new lives outside the pride. This is confirmed not only by canon but also by the sequels. Even the villains, like Kovu or Zira, don't disappear without a trace. They form alternative communities, which means Mufasa could have. Where exactly could he be? Let's imagine a traumatized but alive Mufasa. He falls. His body is not trampled to death. Otherwise, Simba would not have approached him so easily. So he was either unconscious or pretending to be dead. Perhaps to fool Scar. Perhaps from shock. But whatever the case, when Simba leaves, Mufasa is left alone. He realizes that pride is no longer his. His brother has thrown him off. His son has fled. His death benefits everyone. Returning means exposing Scar, yes, but also challenging those who allowed the betrayal. It means civil war. Perhaps Mufasa realizes that his return will lead to an even greater catastrophe. What does he do? He goes away, into the jungle, to the lakes, into unknown lands, where no one knows who he is. where he can heal his wounds, physical and moral. He cannot be a king, father, or ideal, just a lion. But even in the distance he can keep watch. Stealthily. Through rumors, through birds, through the circle of life. He knows that Scar has come to power. That the pride is suffering. That Simba is alive. But why hasn't he returned? Here we come back to the nature of Mufasa. He's the alpha, a leader, a symbol of strength and honor. What does a lion like that do when all is lost? He doesn't beg for mercy. He doesn't ask for his throne back. He disappears if he can't restore order. Let's compare it to mythology. Great leaders don't always die. They go away, like Arthur, Odin, and ancestral spirits. They cease to be men, or lions, and become ideas. That's what Mufasa becomes. A voice in the sky, a light in the clouds. But if you think about it, it's not necessarily supernatural. It could be an interpretation. Mufasa is alive but distant. He is no longer there physically, but he is there mentally. Simba hears his father's voice. But that voice is not a spirit. It's an image, a memory, or an observation from afar. Mufasa could have survived, walked away, or even tried to start a new life. Now the big question is, if he survived and watched Scar destroy everything he lived, why didn't he return? Accepting that Mufasa survived is easy. Finding where he might have been is logical. But explaining why he didn't come back when everything around him was falling apart, that's where the real depth begins. It's not biology, it's psychology, it's not action, it's inaction. The hardest thing for a leader to do is to deliberately disengage when his people are suffering. To understand why Mufasa did not return, one must first understand who he really was. In the original movie, Mufasa is the perfect father, the just king, and the confident teacher, but there is too much perfection in that image to be real. He is not omniscient. He doesn't foresee Scar's betrayal. He doesn't sense that his brother hates him. He doesn't teach Simba how to deal with guilt. Mufasa is not flawless, he's just idealized. Now let's imagine Mufasa survives. He's alone, without pride, without power. He realizes that his brother has turned traitor, his son is an outcast, his death was not prevented, and his people are now under tyranny. This is not just a loss. It is the collapse of everything he believed in. Mufasa may feel guilt, and even shame. In his value system, the king is a pillar. If that pillar collapsed, then he wasn't a king. He was just a figure, a shadow of power. And perhaps he realizes that his rule didn't keep order. His power was fragile, his legacy is shattered. What if Mufasa didn't return not because he couldn't, but because he had no moral right to? He left Simba, not out of will, but out of fact. He lost to Scar, physically and politically. His return would mean admitting defeat and having to act anew. And what could he offer? To retake the throne? But now the pride is destroyed. The people are afraid. The Scar is in power, and Simba is alive. Mufasa could come, only to take power from his own son? That would lead to conflict. A rift. Mufasa couldn't allow that. Simba sees Mufasa in the sky. He hears, "You have forgotten who you are." This scene is perceived as mystical, but consider it rationally. It is an inner monologue, visualized. Exhausted, Simba receives a revelation, essentially his subconscious awakening. The idea of Mufasa speaks to him, not Mufasa himself. But let's allow for another. What if at this moment Mufasa is watching his son, not as a spirit but as an exile? He doesn't intervene. He doesn't speak directly. He lets Simba make his own way. That is the only way to become a true king, not by inheritance but by choice. Mufasa does not return because he is no longer king. He doesn't rule. He doesn't save. He is resigned. Loss of will, psychological death. Mufasa's trauma is not in the body but in the spirit. He has lost everything. Power, his son, his trust. He is a lion thrown from a height. This is not just a physical fall. It is symbolic. Mufasa has fallen from a position of absolute perfection to a point where no one wants him. And perhaps he decides that his presence will hurt more than help. Sometimes leaving is not escapism. It's a conscious disappearance. Mufasa may be going to maintain balance, to avoid destroying what can still be built. And here's the climactic twist. What if Mufasa has been watching all this time, not as a spirit, not as a ghost, but as a living exile who has chosen not to return, for the sake of the future, not the past? And if he is watching, what does he feel when Simba defeats Scar and becomes king? What does he think? And what does he fear most? Let's imagine the impossible. Mufasa returns, broken but alive. The sun has defeated Scar, Pride Land is liberated, and everyone is waiting for a new era. And suddenly, out of the shadows, comes the one who was thought dead. What happens next? Simba is king now. He's been through exile, maturity, and internal struggle. He's not just the heir, he's become what he was meant to be. But Mufasa's return breaks everything. The hierarchy, the symbolism, the hero's journey. What does the son do when the father who became a legend is once again alive and vulnerable? Mufasa can no longer be who he was. His return is not an act of salvation but a threat to the balance. Generational conflict. Simba will feel guilty. He didn't look for his father. He believed him dead. He lived with it. And now must he give in or argue or submit? And Mufasa? He sees a son who grew up without him, strong but different. He can't rule in his place, or he'll devalue Simba's path. And at the same time, he can't just be there for him. He can't be second. This is where the paradox comes into play. The return destroys the idea. As long as Mufasa is dead, he's holy and unreachable. He is conscience, not judgment. But as soon as he's alive, he becomes a figure to be challenged. He becomes mortal again. To return is to explain himself. It means to admit that he survived but did not come. And then comes the ultimate, painful question. Why? Because he was afraid? Because he was ashamed? Because he didn't believe he was needed? Any answer is destructive. It doesn't make Mufasa bad, but it does make him human. Or rather, a lion capable of making mistakes. And that devalues the legend that Simba carries within him. The return mayn't be physical. Mufasa doesn't enter the pride. He stays away, not as an outcast, but as a watcher. He lets Simba rule. He passes on power not by blood but by choice. And that's when the whole story takes on a different meaning. Mufasa is not dead, but he refuses the throne. He knows the past must stay in the past to give the future. He is not a spirit, not a king. He is a transitional bridge between eras. Mufasa remains alive, but unreturned. Not because he couldn't, but because he shouldn't. In the last scene of The Lion King, the pride celebrates the birth of a new heir. Everything is in place. But what if a figure stands somewhere on a rock, in the shadows? Unseen, unrecognizable. He watches. He sees how the son has become a father, and how the circle of life continues. He smiles, and walks away. Forever. Mufasa survived. But he didn't come back. Because he knew that if you're a king, you leave when you don't need to be saved. Write in the comments your version of this episode. Whether you agree with my version or something else would have happened in your opinion. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give me a like. Have a good day everyone and see you soon.